Well, Razorback fans, I know that Razorback football fall camp is this week, but John Calipari got to recap a little bit of what was going on this summer for Razorback basketball. So let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors, and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday. As we mentioned, that Razorback football fall camp will be starting up actually on Wednesday. So get to see a little bit of what the Razorbacks are working with as we get closer and closer to the football season. It's less than a month away, if you can believe it. So really exciting things and exciting times happening for the Razorback football side of things. And as exciting as that is, Razorback basketball might just be a little bit more exciting. Because John Calipari, we know he's the head coach for Arkansas. We know the excitement he's brought. We know the type of mentality that he's trying to bring to not only the Razorback basketball program, but to everybody who is surrounding the program, the excitement that the fans have and everything like that. I mean, it's just a really exciting time, and rightfully so. It should be. It needs to be an exciting time if you're a Razorback basketball fan. And it's incredible still to this day to watch John Calipari do his thing. Just go out there and do his politicking and his campaigning and talk to people. And he's great, man. It's just crazy now that he's your guy. He's the Razorback guy. We kind of overlook all the stuff that we used to maybe hate about him and be like, man, that was awesome. And that's what he does. Like, he's a great communicator, and that's what makes him such a great recruiter. That's what makes him such a great coach and everything. So it's just exciting. It's exciting to see all the things kind of coming together. And one thing, though, like we'll talk about some of the specifics, because I think with scheduling, that was really interesting, and also got to hear from Trevon Brazile for the first time since he has officially announced that he was going to be returning to Arkansas. But I thought that there was a lot of cool things that was said. Like, Cal knows his stuff and knows how to approach it, and talking about setting the tone. He had a couple reasons and a couple of things that he went through and used examples and everything. So one of the things that he was talking about was not only in the summer, saying how important it is to set the tone and to set the culture right now. He says how it's going to work, what we're doing, why we're doing it. Mentioned about how, eating breakfast at the same time, you better be on time, everyone's in the same spot, and getting a workout in the early parts of the morning instead of waiting until later, because it's tougher to get going in the mornings, but you have to build that mental toughness. You got to build that mentality. Just some really interesting things that came from it. But a few things that he mentioned, because I'll talk about the analogy that he made just a second, but he says, quote, "I believe the individual development comes before you start talking systems and how your team's going to play." He says, we've done none of that. System, teamwork plays. We don't have an out-of-bounds play, a zone offense. We don't have a press. We have nothing. What we worked on was individual development, getting them to understand where we're taking, or where we're trying to take each individual. The reason is, at the end of the year, my hope is to say, I've never been a better basketball player. At the end of the year, that's what we want. But the foundation for that started right here in the summer. So, nothing really too extravagant about what he's been saying in that. But just looking at it again from the perspective of walking in and getting after it, it's amazing that when, we've heard a few things from him, but, when he first got here, he didn't have a team. He didn't have a team. He didn't have a staff. He had nothing. And now here it is. The team is officially set. The coaching staff is officially set. We know how good of an expectation has been set, but even though the pieces are all there, all the ingredients are there, it's now the time to start building it and start to building the foundation. Because you also got to think of it from this perspective, where I'm as excited as anybody for Razorback basketball, but you got to take into consideration that Cal, only a few players have actually played under Cal that are on this team, and those are the transfers from Kentucky. The rest of them are brand spanking new. Some of them have never played college basketball before. A few of them have played SEC basketball before. And some of them have had some great experience by going to the Final Four in the case of Nelly Davis. So all of that is just so interesting to see, how it's all going to mesh and how it's all going to work out. But he's talking about a lot of the mind and the body and the technique. He says, is as much mind as it is body. How do we make them as uncomfortable as we can? And they learn about comfortable in those environments. That's what we did all summer. We didn't do just shooting. We conditioned, then they make a shot. Now make shots. How do we make them uncomfortable? So that's about the thing of pushing players and pushing them, which, again, I know it's not anything profound. I think every coach tries to approach it in this way, but this is what's fascinating with Cal is because he's established. He doesn't have to prove anything to anybody as a head coach. The dude he's in the Hall of Fame. He's won a national championship. He's been to multiple Final Fours. He's got so many NBA first-round picks. It's incredible. And then even if you look at like this year's Olympic team, a lot of those players were coached by Cal or at least have some sort of correlation with Cal. Like he doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. But here he is in the rejuvenated state of being the Razorback basketball head coach. Where's that energy going to come from? And I'm not going to speak for him. I know he's done a good enough job, but I just still go back to the fact that anytime you're new, even though you've accomplished it all, if you're still in a new spot, there's going to be a renewed energy. There's going to be a renewed self-awareness and self-accomplishment and self-drive and motivation to be great. Because it's not the same thing all the time anymore. You don't get into a rhythm and routine that makes you complacent. It's still all going to be new. So, and that's not just for him. He's trying to make sure that he makes the guys uncomfortable too. And that's what he was talking about. He's like, hey, you can do all these things. We know you're good basketball players, but we got to push you to your limit and find out where that limit is and then push you even further than that. We want to set the tone early that this isn't something like, oh, you're playing for Coach Cal, therefore I'm just going to be here for a year and then get out and go to the NBA. It's not that way. You got to earn it here. And there's just so much of a mindset to it. And he talked about this, and I thought this was really interesting, and talking about kings. He's like, you got to have the mentality of a king. And this comes from 24/7 Sports. Says, to explain how he's getting his team to think, he used a thing about Arnold Palmer meeting the king of Moran. He says the gist of the story was that the king asked Palmer what he liked for a gift. Palmer just told him he'd like a golf club. And Palmer was imagining this fancy gold-plated driver. And later, in a letter from the king, he doesn't have a driver, but he has a deed to a golf club, like an actual golf club, an entire golf course. And that's what he wants his players to think about and dream. He says, quote, and this is Calipari, the biggest challenge you have, and I've always had this mindset, is how do I get these guys to think different, how to think bigger? I'm trying to get them to think like kings because kings think different. Kings think different than we think. And I've got to get these kids to understand, I want you to think big and dream big, but you must work bigger. But your dreams for yourself and your teams have to be big. I love that mentality too, because that's how I view Cal, to be honest. Like that's how I've always viewed Cal. When I've seen him at Kentucky and at Memphis and everything, like he was a big deal. You know, I knew he's a big deal. I knew whenever I went to SEC basketball media days when he was at Kentucky, when he walked in, it was a big deal. But when he becomes the coach that you cover each and every day, and you see him and you hear about him, and you hear about the excitement and the drive and the madness and the chaos that follows him every single place that he goes, it makes you say, okay, this guy is bigger than just a basketball coach. And the reason that he's gotten to that point is because he has had that same mentality, like he's referring to as a king, where it's not just about going in and golly gee, doing your best and for the love of the game of basketball and the X's and O's. What it is about being greater than great, being bigger than big, just having a mentality that is above and beyond everybody, because that's what's going to separate you from so much. And that's a very relatable, but also a very, almost want to say contagious type of mentality. Like if you surround yourself, whether it's your players or your staff that have that same mentality, it's just going to grow into the culture itself. And I just love that type of approach to it, because it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to have it. And Cal has had that because he's accomplished so much. But when I look at videos that I've seen from him being in recruiting visits with some of the players that he ended up recruiting, yes, there is an element because it's John Calipari coming into your house or whatever that you're kind of like, ooh, straighten up, be focused, and this means a lot more. But it's true about what he does and what he does for his players. He wants more out of them. He wants them to accomplish more. And he doesn't want to have any excuses. He doesn't want to have any issues. He doesn't want to have any, having to string you along or you just come walking in and thinking that you're just going to be great. You got to earn it. And I think that is, at least among the all-time greats and some of the greatest players you see in the NBA right now, it's a very reflective thing. Now, are these players great only in the NBA because of that one less than a year they spent at Kentucky or at Memphis or whatever it is? No, it's not the only thing. But if you talk to the players, if you look at the way that they view John Calipari and they view him as a coach, I think it'd be extremely, extremely dumb to think that he did not have any sort of impact whatsoever. I think it'd be really dumb. But you know what's not dumb? Arkansas and some of the teams they're going to be playing in this non-conference set. And we're going to talk about that here on the other side of the break. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, we are brought to you by FanDuel. We all love sports. We love them so much, and we never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down and we get fewer games and the sports just aren't sportsing like we want them to, FanDuel helps us out because they're going to keep the sports going whenever that we want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up bets at any time we're in the mood, and we're rolling from there. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. It's FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. We talk a lot of basketball today. That's going to be the topic of conversation. But I was really curious about some of the games that Arkansas will be playing in this non-conference slate. We know a few of them and how high-profile, potentially iconic and legendary type of games and matchups that they'll be. I mean, they're going to Madison Square Garden. They're going to be playing Michigan in the Jimmy V Classic. How awesome is that? That's such a cool thing. You have that. You have, of course, the SEC ACC Challenge, but Arkansas is going to be going down to Miami in the non-conference slate. So that'll be pretty fascinating. And there's a few other teams that may not be of note, but the game against Illinois and Kansas City will be a big one, too, up at the T-Mobile Center. So that'll be a lot of fun. But Cal leaked out, or I'm not saying leaked out as if he didn't mean to say it, but he did give a little bit extra insight on a potential few other games that'll be happening in the non-conference slate. Because I kept wondering about that Dallas game. He had mentioned that, I guess, it was at SEC meetings down in Destin. He had mentioned that, we got a game in Little Rock and a game in Madison Square Garden and a game in Kansas City and a game in Dallas. And I was like, Dallas? Okay, so who are they going to be playing in Dallas? Well, according to John Calipari, he's working on playing an exhibition game down there. So it won't be a regular season game. It'll be an exhibition game, which odds are means it'll be in October. And it's going to be against TCU. Okay, Jamie Dixon over there. Arkansas's played TCU a few times. And being down there in Dallas, I assume it's going to be played there where the Mavericks are playing at. I could be wrong. Maybe they play it somewhere else. But for all I know, they could be playing on a boat or something like that. Maybe they play it on a jetway. I don't know. But the game's going to be in Dallas, and it's going to be an exhibition game. But here's the really cool one. There's going to be another, or I should say they're working on it, which Cal's working on it. I'm sure it'll happen. Another exhibition game in Bud Walton Arena against the team called the Kansas Jayhawks. Old Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Bill Self, team that won a national championship a few years ago. The team that Arkansas beat a couple years ago to go to the Sweet 16. That Kansas, that's going to be in Fayetteville in an exhibition game. So think about that, man. I know it's an exhibition game, and these two are exhibition games, and they don't count. But you get Kansas. You got Purdue last year, which was really cool. I know the season did not go well, but Arkansas winning that exhibition game was probably one of the high points of the year. Maybe between that and Duke was about it. But it was so fun to go into that and to see how good the team was and how good they played. And they ended up taking care of business in that. And, it's something else that could really bring in Kansas, because I think Kansas may bring in even more fans than what we saw at Purdue. Like, what if that's the first game of the exhibition slate? Like, how insane would that be? Because they haven't come out with schedules or anything like that. And it looks like if those are the only two exhibition games, like one TCU and Kansas, we'll see. But imagine if it's like, all right, the very first look that you get at John Calipari as the head coach of Arkansas with this great team that's going to be preseason top 10, top 15, probably picked to be finishing second, maybe third, maybe in the SEC. What are you going to see them as? What are they going to be? Oh, they're going to be playing Kansas in a non-conference exhibition game. Who wouldn't sign up for that? Who's not going to be checking that out? Who's not going to be watching that? Everyone's going to be rolling in it. And so this is the Cal factor, folks. This is the Cal impact. This is what I've been hoping and wishing and praying for so long, among other things, of course, when it comes to Razorback basketball. But just to have some non-conference games that bring in interest and intrigue. Now, there's different ways to skin a cat. I had no problem in the way that Muss handled his non-conference opponents because it was very methodical. It was very smart. It was a way of, okay, let's try to get people who are just good enough to help out our net ranking, but not too good to where they're going to beat us and end up being a problem. That's fine. Like, and that's what works. But it never really added up to having any marquee matchups. I mean, if you really think about it, what is the most marquee matchup that Arkansas's had in the past decade in the non-conference slate that wasn't, the Maui Invitational or the SEC Big 12 Challenge or whatever? It's like Oklahoma's been really the only one. Maybe, I think, close to 10 years ago, you played Michigan. That was a pretty big deal. Maybe Syracuse, no, because that was part of the SEC Big East Challenge. So, point is you just really haven't had that many. Maybe Texas was on occasion. But now it's all like happening at once. Now you're talking about getting to play against Kansas. Again, I know the games don't count in that way, but just to show where you're at and show where you're going and show how much attention is being paid. You're talking about Kansas. I mean, anytime you can play Kansas is a big deal. But playing Kansas in Bud Walton Arena, in Fayetteville, in an exhibition game, sail me out to sea, sign me up. I am all in on that. Playing TCU, a quality team, a team that's usually in the NCAA tournament, right there in Dallas. It's going to be big. You're going to be playing frickin' Michigan. All right? In Madison Square Garden. Incredible. You're going to be playing Illinois, another great team. Team that's constantly in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you're talking about just between Kansas, Michigan, because I think Michigan's going to be really good. At least they should be with their new coach and new recruiting and all that. And then you got, Miami's going to be good. You just got so many teams to look forward to playing this year. It's almost like, it's almost overwhelming. It's really cool. Almost overwhelming, not too much, but I'm just excited about basketball season. I know we got to get through football first, and we will, but I'm just really excited about it and can't wait to see what the rest is going to hold. But we'll talk about something else with basketball. Trevon Brazile coming up next year on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, so stay with us. All right, folks, I got a question for you. Are you taking that dream vacation this summer but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all of your purchases, so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to even toys. So you can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you end up purchasing. Other apps give you points, and they don't really amount to very much. But with Ibotta, you earn cash back that can help you withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. So right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Folks, I also got to tell you, warmer and sunnier days are calling. Fuel up with the Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always get to enjoy and have the time nutritious, great tasting meals. Crush your wellness goals this month. Doesn't matter which month, because it's about to be August. It's about to be August. That's kind of when you need to start doing it the most. But you can stay fueled with easy, nutritious options and their restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. So check it out today. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 for 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is still active. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. The basketball team, hearing from John Calipari and getting to hear from the players is always going to be a unique thing. We had a chance to hear from Adu Thiero, former Kentucky player, as well as Boogie Fland, a true freshman, and also Trevon Brazile. Now, there's a lot of different things that we can take from this, but the Trevon Brazile angle is definitely a very fascinating one. We all know that. We all know that he has been a player at Arkansas now. This is going to be his third year at Arkansas. Played at Missouri before that. And honestly, I remember when it was all going down with him and him going into the NBA draft. I was like, okay, well, he'll probably get drafted. So a lot of people had him in the second round or whatnot. But then something must have changed, whether you went to the combine or whether they talked to scouts where it's like, hey, you're actually not going to be drafted. Here's some things you kind of need to work on. You probably need to go back to college. Well, then he went into the transfer portal. And I still was like, I get it. Try something new, want to do something differently. Nothing wrong with that. Completely and totally understandable. But then he decided to come back to Arkansas, and I was like, whoa. I was not expecting that. I'll be honest. Like, it's not like some sort of crazy thing like, oh, my goodness, you would have never dreamed in a million years. But it was a pretty surprising deal. I don't care who you are. That was a surprising deal. So he was asked simply about, well, why'd you come back? What was it, that decision and everything? And Cal even talked about it beforehand, but he said, when I went into that locker room, and there was no one there, my thought was, well, maybe he just didn't want to be here. And I wasn't going to beg anybody. I don't even beg recruits that I'm recruiting. They've got to want this as bad as I want them. They've got to want it and want me and our staff. And with a player that's been here, if they don't want to be here, would you want him here? I find out, Coach, I think he wants to be here. Really? Well, let's get him on the phone with me because I knew he was good. And then we talked to his dad, sat down, and that's what he wanted to do. I said, well, let's go do this. I told him my plan for him and what we're trying to do. So kind of a really cool thing. But Brazile also went on, says why he wanted to play for Cal. He says his resume speaks for itself. What he did at Kentucky with guys like DeMarcus Cousins, Karl Anthony Towns, and Anthony Davis, it's undeniable. Just coming here and buying into everything that he's saying and that his staff is saying, it's been really good. And he also says that says Cal's practice is way different. He says he's in there laying on his back, and I said, you're better. Or Cal's talking about Brazile. He says he's in there laying on his back, and I said, you're better than I thought you were. He looks at me and he says, I told you. That's the confidence I want him to feel. But he's got to get into wars and be comfortable in those situations. He also said, he's like, I'd say they're different. Like I said, it's more about working on individual stuff throughout the summer with Muss. We were doing team practices and stuff. We just did a lot of individual work this summer, and we're just setting the culture. That's what Brazile went on to say. So I'm for it. I'm for this. And I love to have him back. And also Cal was talking about like 3-point shooting and saying like he doesn't want him shooting threes as much. He wants them, which is, again, you got to be good at all. You want everything to be good. I don't think Brazile's a bad 3-point shooter at all. But with his athleticism and his gift and his reach and all of that, he's so much better when he's able to get to the rim, have lob passes thrown up to him. I mean, you got some pretty sick athletes. I mean, Thiero's a sick athlete, and Brazile's a sick athlete, as long as he stays healthy, because I know he's battled some injuries and stuff. But it's just good to see it all kind of coming together. A little bit of familiarity with a little bit of the newness, with a little bit of the goal. I mean, what are you missing right now? I mean, for crying out loud, you got 5-star players that are freshmen. You got former 5-star players that are going to be sophomores coming in from Kentucky. You got some of the best transfers in the country that are coming here. I mean, what more could you ask for right now? Well, I'm sure there's a lot more, but still, it's an exciting time for Razorback basketball, and hopefully it continues on, and hopefully it continues to build, and hopefully it continues to be pretty exciting for you Razorback fans, because Lord knows you need something a little bit exciting. But either way, appreciate everybody listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel. Tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.